This is Jill Spear, Chair of the West Hartford Library Board, and I'd like to welcome you to the meeting of May 24th, 2021. Because in-person attendance at public meetings is likely to increase the risk of transmission of COVID-19. One second, before I'm going to just back off a second. Hello? 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 Okay, that was, I'm sorry, we have to start again. That was Natalia, and it just didn't connect through. What I'd like to do is start the meeting over. In the meantime, Janet, can you?
I will send her another link.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't handle both at once. Okay, let's start again. The meeting will come to order. This is Jill Spear, Chair of the Library Board. I'd like to welcome you to the meeting of the Library Board meeting of May 24th, 2021. Because in-person attendance at public meetings is likely to increase the risk of transmission of COVID-19, this meeting is being conducted in accordance with Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7B, which is extended by a series of executive orders, which permits municipalities to continue to meet public meetings virtually. Board members and some library staff are participating by WebEx, and members of the public can view the meeting on West Hartford Community Television or on West Hartford Community Active Comcast Channel 96 or Frontier Channel 6099. Excuse me, or on YouTube through www.whctv.org. The meeting is also being recorded for on-demand viewing subsequently and will be available at the town and the library's websites. Because of the virtual format, there's some of the rules and procedures that we need to cover before the meeting begins. First, we'll ask that everyone mute their phone. And if you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. If you're participating via audio only, or do not call on you before a debate on a motion is ended, please unmute your phone and let me know so that I can recognize you. Second, pursuant to the Governor Lamont's executive orders, all speakers must state their name and title each time they speak. Third, because of the difficulty in tallying votes on a video conference, we will require that most votes be taken by roll. And lastly, fourth, a reminder that if any participant has trouble with their connection, please call Janet Valensis on the number you provided earlier, and we'll try to resolve that. If we can't resolve it and there's a motion in place that we need to vote on, we'll recess the meeting and see if we can resolve the problem. I'll now call the roll and note the staff members who are present. Kim Cohen.
Sorry, Kim Cohen, Library Board member, present.
Gail Crockett.
Gail Crockett, Library Board member, present.
Eileen Daly.
Eileen Daly, Library Board member, present.
Natalia Menjivar.
Menjivar, Library Board member, present.
And Jill Spear, Library Board Chair, present. Thank you. Okay, now, I'd like to also note in attendance the library staff, Acting Chair Carol Waxman and Office of Operations Specialist Janet Valensis, as well as guest Town Manager Matt Hart, are also in attendance. Our first agenda item is approval of the consent agenda items 3, 8I, and 8II. Do we have a motion for approval of the consent agenda? I see Chair recognizes Gail Crockett. Gail, you're on mute.
Gail, I've muted you. While you're not speaking, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Gail Crockett, Library Board member, moved the motion to approve the consent calendar.
Agenda. Do I have a second? Chair recognizes Eileen Daly. Eileen, you're on mute.
Just note to everyone, I do put you on mute if you're not speaking. So when you go to speak, you'll have to unmute yourself. Gail, I'm going to put you back on mute, just so we don't have the background noise.
Got it. Eileen Daly, board member. I second the motion.
A motion is made and been seconded. Any debate? I'll now call the roll. Kim Cohen?
Kim Cohen, Library Board Member, aye.
Yes. Thank you. Gail Crockett?
Gail, can you unmute yourself?
Gail Crockett, Library Board Member, approve.
Thank you. Eileen Daly?
Eileen Daly, library board member, approved.
Natalia Menjivar?
Natalia Menjivar, Library Board Member, aye.
And Jill Spear, Library Board Chair. Aye. Motion is made and passed, and for approval of consent agenda. The next agenda item is the President's report. I have just one item this evening, which is West Hartford Board Training on Freedom of Information Act. Have any members been able to complete the recording of the virtual training that I sent you earlier after the last meeting? And if so, can you raise your hand and let me know so we can note that? Gail, I noticed that yes, Gail and I were both in there. And of course, some library staff did as well. So if you haven't been able to complete it, can you try to target doing so before the end of June? Okay, and Chair recognizes Natalia.
Thank you, Natalia Menjivar, Library Board Member. I was also able to complete the FOIA training.
Okay, great, thank you. And just how did you like it?
Very informative. I had actually heard about it from my husband, who is an attorney, so I at least knew a little bit going in.
Yeah, very thorough, but it was nice having a recording so you could slow it down, right? Yeah, that will be our tip to all of you. Although Kim, as an attorney, perhaps it'll be all familiar to you anyway. All right, that's the end of the President's report. Our next agenda item is old business, and the first item is the fiscal year 22 budget update, and the chair recognizes Acting Chair Carol Waxman to give us that update. Carol?
Good evening. Good evening, Carol Waxman, Acting Library Director. Budget hearings were held in April, and there were no public comments at either of the hearings. The April 22nd, 2021 budget adoption date was postponed due to the impending arrival of the American Rescue Plan Act funds, as well as information as to how these funds may be appropriated by the town. The funds are reimbursements for emergencies and COVID-related expenses that the town endured during the pandemic and weather and power outage emergencies. The town has until 2024 to spend these funds. The Town Finance Department will determine how to incorporate the funds into the FY22 operating budget. This budget has been amended and reduced slightly from a 2.79% increase to a 2.77% increase. The new budget adoption date will be tomorrow, May 25th. It is expected that we may use some of the rescue plan funding for capital improvements that will not be funded through the regular budget. For library capital improvement projects, requests for the Faxon branch, such as new carpeting and window blinds, will not be on the list any longer due to the impending move of the library to the new facility to be built in Elmwood. For the Noah Webster Library, windows in the periodical room are slated to be repainted and have new storms installed to provide improved functionality and energy efficiency. We are presently working on the impact of the expected final FY22 budget in terms of an operating schedule for all library buildings for post-COVID hours. And that concludes my report on the library budget.
Thank you, Carol. Sorry, I forgot I muted myself. Any questions? All right, we'll move on. Our next agenda item is the new Community Cultural Center and Library Branch. And Town Manager Matt Hart is here to give us an update. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Jill. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you online. How's everyone doing? It's been quite a year, almost a year and a half, hasn't it? I recently had a chance to attend a library staff meeting, and just so impressive to see our team in action, you know, and what a tremendous job they have done this past year, you know, supporting our organization and the community. And tonight, you know, I'm excited to be here to chat with you about a proposal we have in front of us, in front of the town council, to acquire the former St. Bridget's School campus at 100 Mayflower Street for the potential of building a new community center on site, a cultural center, senior center, teen center, and hopefully a library branch as well. So I've got a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation I'd like to share, if that's okay, Jill. I think some of you have probably seen it before. I think it will help out just for purposes of the discussion. So I'm going to bring that up now. All right, can folks see that okay? I know I don't have the presenter view. People can see that all right? Good, okay. So why are we considering this? And again, the proposal is to acquire the now closed school, which served the community very well for decades, to build a new community center on site. The cultural center, I mentioned, senior center, teen center, and hopefully a library branch as well. And thinking that we could also repurpose the existing Elmwood Community Center facility and potentially the existing Faxon branch for redevelopment and grand list growth. And I'll talk more about what that means in a couple of minutes. So why did we bring this to the town council? Why are we asking you and other key stakeholders to consider it? First of all, the site of the existing Elmwood Community Center, the building is dated and it is constrained largely by geography and topography. Expansion would be very difficult. It is something we have looked at. It's something we have looked at in the past. It has limited vehicular access. You know, it's off of that small side street, Burgoyne. We do not have direct access off of New Britain Avenue. Probably would be difficult to reobtain that. I'm sure when it served as a school, it had a curb cut on New Britain Avenue, but at some point in its history, the DOT cut that off. And then also the existing Elmwood site and the Faxon site, to a lesser extent, have some redevelopment potential. And I've just cited a few figures here that are currently on our assessor's record. I'm not saying that this is what the properties would sell for, but this is currently what the assessor has them listed at. You know, the community center building at approximately $9 million, and the Faxon branch at approximately $1.65 million. Now the St. Bridget location, it's larger. It doesn't have the same constraints with respect to topography, road access, and it's located immediately adjacent to Beachland Park with 40 plus acres. And proximity to the park offers a number of advantages for programming purposes. So we initially became aware of the fact that the school was closing and that it was would be eventually put up for sale about a year ago now. And I reached out to the parish that owns the church, and we began a conversation, you know, and they agreed to work with the town and actually gave us, you know, some period of time to review this. And we did commission an appraisal, and the appraisal did support the seller, the parish's asking price, and they've been very adamant throughout that they're seeking $3 million for the purchase price. So here's a little bit more about that St. Bridget location. Here's a snapshot of the site and adjacent neighborhoods. And the land area, approximately 8.5 acres. The zoning, I'll get into that in a little bit more detail the next slide. As I said, it's immediately adjacent to Beachland Park here. It was built around 1960, 1961. And it's roughly 2.5 stories, approximately 46,500 square feet, and has some parking on site as well. Looking at the zoning related to that location, it's currently zoned one family residential with some limited additional uses that would be permitted under what's called a special use permit. And these are things such as nonprofit institutions or a government institution. Could be a government building, could be a library building, could be a child care center, could be a cemetery, could be a public park. All of those things are permitted under the current zoning under a special use permit. So the zoning at 100 Mayflower Street, the St. Bridget location, is actually, you know, somewhat restrictive. So comparing that to the existing site of the Elmwood Community Center. So this building, you see it here, along with the adjacent property. It's a little under 5.7 acres, a little over 5.5 acres. It is split zoned. The vehicular access, as I stated, is off of Burgoyne Street right here. And it does have some access to the Trout Brook Trail. And this was an old school, or a school that was built in 1928, 2.5 stories, almost 69,000 square feet with some associated parking on site. Now looking at the zoning for the existing Elmwood location, it's currently split zoned, business district, general industrial district, as well as multifamily, And the permitted uses, the permitted as of right uses include multifamily housing, office, retail, restaurants, wholesale businesses, even warehousing, as well as certain auto-oriented uses. So the zoning here is much more permissive than what we see at the St. Bridget location. So this actually makes the existing Elmwood site, it has more potential for redevelopment under our existing zoning than the St. Bridget location does. So thinking about acquiring the St. Bridget location, what are some near-term use options? Because we don't think, certainly at a staff level, that the existing facility, the existing school facility, is going to be adequate to meet our needs. So what we did discuss with the council is that we could use it in a very limited capacity initially, perhaps the gymnasium, perhaps some of the adjacent classrooms, And we think that would cost us roughly $150,000 a year. Another option would be to acquire it and mothball it, more or less. We would disconnect the utilities and we would secure the building while we are working on our larger redevelopment project. And under that scenario, we think we'd have an initial expense of about $25,000, and we'd be spending about $16,000 a year to maintain the exterior of the site, some limited maintenance inside. And then a third option would be to acquire it and demolish it while we're planning the new building. And right now, we think that cost would be about $2.5 to $3 million, in addition to the purchase price. The contract that we have negotiated with the parish, it's a purchase price of $3 million, including a $50,000 deposit. And I apologize, there's a typo here. It actually is refundable. And we have included the funding for the purchase price in what's called our capital improvement program, our capital plan. So under this contract, it's subject to standard contingencies, such as the municipal approvals that we're going to need, as well as acceptable results from the inspections we're conducting right now. So we're assessing the building and the property, as well as the title search and a property survey. You know, and to some extent, it's a little similar to buying a home, right? You get a period of time, you enter into that preliminary contract with your seller, and it gives you an opportunity to have a building inspection before you make your final decision. It's a similar principle. So we've got 90 days to complete our due diligence, and the closing will occur 150 days after my signing of the purchase and sale agreement. So towards the end of March, on March 23rd, a little over 2 months ago, the council authorized me to execute the real estate contract. And that due diligence period, it's now underway. So what are our immediate next steps over the next 150 days or so? So we're doing those due diligence inspections. We're inspecting the mechanical, the electrical, an environmental assessment. You know, institutional building of this age and type could have lead, could have asbestos, could have PCBs. None of those things would surprise us, but you know, we need to know to what extent that contamination might be there. Also assessing the integrity of the structure itself. Our attorneys are doing a title search, and our engineering team is handling the property survey. The council, as they needed to do pursuant to our charter, they also referred the proposed acquisition to our Town Plan and Zoning Commission, TPZ. And TPZ, their jurisdiction was, or their charge was to look at the acquisition to see if it would be consistent with the goals in our plan of conservation and development that they are responsible for drafting and helping to administer. And they have issued a favorable report. They issued it in late April. I think it was unanimous, finding that the acquisition is indeed consistent with the plan of conservation and development. So the town council is now likely to make a final decision on the acquisition sometime in June, following the completion of these our due diligence. If we find anything surprising in those inspections, that will give us an opportunity to either negotiate further with the seller. We may want the seller to correct some things. We may want to adjust the purchase price depending on what we find, or we could even decide to walk away. You know, if we think it's just going to be too much for the town to handle. I don't anticipate that, but the possibility is there. So let's assume all goes well and the council decides to approve it, make a final decision in June. The closing would occur in August. So we could own this building in August of this year. What would happen next? What would happen next over the next year to 2 years, maybe even longer when we talk about building something? I think the first thing we would do following the acquisition of the property would be to hire an architect to work with key stakeholders, such as yourselves, such as our Elmwood Business Association, the various associations we have in place at Elmwood, including our Senior Citizens Advisory Board, to develop a conceptual program for the new facility and to help us determine if renovation would be the best option or if new construction altogether would be preferable. I think at a minimum, we'll probably only be able to use a portion of the existing facility. So we'll first complete this feasibility study, and that will take several months, maybe the better part of a year. We'll then engage in what's called design development. So that is where we're going to take that conceptual program and actually design a building that would enable us that would incorporate the program, able to bring the program to life. So when we engage in design development, we'll be assembling a team of architects, engineers, perhaps an owner's rep, a construction manager, to engage the key stakeholders such as yourselves even further and design the project. I expect that will take at least a year, maybe even a little longer. Eventually, we'll have a proposed building project. I would assume a couple years from now, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later. We'll bring that proposed building project to the town council for its review and approval. And then the council would need to fund the project through our capital improvement program. Hopefully we'll be able to receive some state money for the project, and then we will construct it. And I would think construction of a building like this would probably take at least a year. So this is a multi-year project we're talking about. It's not something that would happen overnight. You know, I'm guessing 2 to 4 years. At some point in time, we would also more formally assess the redevelopment potential of the existing Elmwood Community Center and Faxon if we decide to put the library branch here at the new location. And then we would look to either sell or lease those properties through some type of competitive process. You know, and we would want to see a new use at Elmwood, a new use at Faxon that really is compatible with the existing community and the goals we're hoping to achieve there, such as promoting transit-oriented development. So that's where we stand right now. Again, multi-year project, very exciting to think about the potential here. And why don't I pause and take any questions you all have, Jill?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Chair, does anyone have any immediate questions for Matt? Chair recognizes Natalia.
Hi, Natalia Menjivar, Library Board Member. Thank you so much. That presentation was really informative. I was actually curious to know the differences in the appraisal report and the purchase price of the current location for $3 million. You mentioned that one was quite a bit larger, 8.5 acres versus the existing location. Was the biggest difference the building sizes, the square footage of the current buildings, and the multi-use aspects of those different properties, or what was the difference? I know one was coming up at close to 10 million for a 5.5 acre versus the much larger St. Bridget property. What were some of the biggest factors that you see in the differences in those properties?
A great question, Natalia. Thank you. So the assessment we have in place for Elmwood, that's not a formal appraisal. So that's what our assessor is valuing it at right now. You know, there probably have been some more recent updates in the Elmwood facility than at the St. Bridget School. And so we actually hired an appraiser to look at the St. Bridget School, and the appraisal came in a little bit above the purchase price, just a little bit higher. So I would think, you know, they look at building condition. They also look at the to some extent at the zoning and the development potential. And as I explained, it's actually the zoning at the existing Elmwood site is much more. There's much more potential for redevelopment there.
Other questions? I know we're going to have a lot as we move along through this process. We'll try not to torture Matt too much, but I do have one. I'm going to recognize myself, and then I'll recognize you, Natalia. Okay, Matt, I have one question. In the slide, you talked about the feasibility study, and then the next step was the hiring the architect. In terms of the library fitting in on that, there are certain architects who specialize in library buildings because they're unique aspects. So as the second, and then you talked about the library kind of being evaluated at a different point. How are you going to align those two? Or have you thought about that yet? It's a little early, but have you thought about that yet?
Oh, good question, Joe. I think we would look to retain an architect that has skill in that discipline as well. So
both community center type expertise as well as public libraries, which are
correct. Okay, you know, and there are some out there. You know, I've been involved in a number of building projects throughout my career, and it's a more discrete set of firms that specialize in public projects, including libraries.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
And the chair recognizes Natalia Menjivar.
Thank you, Natalia Menjivar, library board member. And actually, just to dovetail on Jill's question, I was curious whether it was in the plans for it to be one building or perhaps a series of buildings to cater to the different needs you're mentioning of a community center, library, and other potential goals.
A good question, Natalia. Matt Hart, town manager. I'm sorry, I haven't been stating my name. You know, I think it's open right now. You know, we'll see various concepts. That's one of the reasons why this is exciting. Again, with 8.5 acres, we have room to do some really neat things there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I think we have any more questions? I'm going to give the last question to me because I got one actually when the agenda was published. People are interested in, will there be a traffic study? Since while both facilities are currently off New Britain Avenue, in terms of the bus, I forget what it's called, the bus sheltering stops for Elmwood is a little, I don't know what that thing is called, that allows it not to stop traffic, which we don't have at Faxon. But I know that there's been a number of studies over the years, and so the question came, is there going to be a traffic study and perhaps amelioration to deal with that incorporated in the plan?
Matt Hart, town manager. Yes. Part of this, you know, there'll be a pretty extensive engineering analysis.
Okay, great.
If I could ask, Jill, how do board members feel? You know, what's your initial reaction here? I know you've been chatting about it a little bit over the last couple of months when this became public, but what are some of your thoughts? What concerns might you have?
Why don't we open it up? Kim, I'm going to just do a quick call. Kim?
Kim Cohen, library board member. I guess, still so many possibilities, but a lot of uncertainty. So hard to, kind of get my mind around. I guess, I think obviously the Faxon Library building has had a number of issues over the years. So I think, I guess that aspect of it is most exciting to me. I know there's just been some issues there that have been kind of remediated to the best of our ability, but it's not really, it's not going away. That, building does have some issues. So I think the idea of, the opportunity to be part of the new development and have a building there, is exciting. And I personally have gone to a number of things at the Elmwood Community Center, so I'm aware of the important role it plays in the community too. So, there's obviously a lot of need in that area, and already a really high, I think, utilization of the facilities that are there. So it's exciting to think about, I'm excited to hear what ideas these experts come up with, because there's probably things that I can't even think of, I'm just drawing on ideas from the neighborhoods I've lived in over the years, so it would be exciting to see what the latest and greatest is, or what would be best for that property. So not really a question, Jill, but rambling thoughts.
Gail, do you have any particular comments?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's a wonderful, great idea. The idea of having the library, the Faxon Library, expanded, enlarged, and just made more available and usable to so many people that live in the community there, who would truly welcome it. Also, the fact that the senior center will also, the Elmwood Community Center rather, would get a big boost. And, both of those are very heavily visited, and people in the community enjoy them. I know that from volunteering over there at the Elmwood Community Center from time to time at the gym. And I guess from another perspective, the whole idea of a cultural center, or an opportunity for there to be one in our town, which currently does not exist, is just significantly, for me, exciting to hear and know that the town is moving progressively in that direction, because we have so many cultural groups here who from time to time are looking for space to meet or hold a function, or just have a community affair, and there's just nowhere that can accommodate that. So those are my immediate thoughts, dovetailing what both Natalia and Kim said about it's early, but it sounds like all the stakeholders, and particularly people in that community, will have an opportunity to speak up and address their concerns.
Thank you, Gail. Eileen, do you have any initial thoughts? You're still on mute, Eileen.
I'm excited for everyone in the neighborhood in West Hartford. With a new building in the offing, that alone is enticing, and it'll certainly draw more people to both the community center and the library, which is never hurts. We'll miss the older buildings, but I think I'm assuming that the traffic entry for the community center, the new one, will be better than what's available at the ECC now. I always felt it was a little difficult to get in and out for people, and I'm just glad that they're not letting this up. The town is taking advantage of the opportunity of St. Bridget's unfortunate school closing. So I think it'll keep it all in the family, so to speak, by rejuvenating the library.
And Natalia, any other thoughts from you?
I'm just a fan of, of any development and any repurposing to enhance these spaces, and potentially bring new programming, new offerings to the community. And I definitely agree with the accessibility, with it being such a large space. More people have more access to it. So.
Yeah, and lastly, my own thoughts, Matt. I'm super excited. I've been involved with the Friends of the Library and the Foundation and the Library Board and all that time, which is, my daughter was in kindergarten and is now working. All that time, the Faxon branch, and has had concerns and different plans drawn up. So I'm excited just to see us, move forward and make a strategic initiative. My one things that I would really like, and near and dear to my heart, is not just the core services that the library and community centers provide, but I'd like to keep my eye on accessibility, both in the site and the building, obviously, but more so, I'm hoping that they're so rare that you get a chance to have a new library site, building, whatever you want to call it, the whole thing, that I want to make sure that we're bold and look forward, not backwards, and take advantage of lessons learned from the pandemic. You know, I want the building that's the 2050 building, not the building that's the 2025 building. And I would encourage the town to be bold. You know, whether that's what we've learned about ventilation systems, what we've learned about outdoor meeting space, everything about that, I'd love to see incorporated. And Kim, I see you have another comment, please.
Yes, sorry, just Jill, what you said, Kim Cohen, library board member, was just sparked something. I mean, I think there's some limitations in existing buildings, you know, and this might present an opportunity. And just what you were saying about accessibility, Jill, you know, perhaps something like non-gendered bathrooms or things that, you know, the limitations of space in an old building might not make it feasible when you also factor in other types of accessibility, you know, logistics. So I would love to see us kind of embrace, you know, all sorts of inclusion in the design of the physical building as well. I don't know where the town is going with that, with other areas, but as Jill said, a new building provides the opportunity to perhaps do more than we could in other circumstances.
Yeah. I like to say, this is Jill Spear, Library Board Chair. I like to say that to everyone I talk to about the West Hartford Library and West Hartford in general, that the town is small enough that you can get really incredible things done. You know, you're not like Marley, you're not borne down by these other weights because it's small enough, but it's large enough that you can do really innovative things. And that's what I'm just really on board and hoping that that's the direction we go. So thank you for taking the time, Matt. And I know we'll have a million questions for you and long lists of requirements, but and we really appreciate you taking the time to come to the board meeting.
Matt Hart, Town Manager, thank you so much. Thank you for your input. It's really exciting to think about the potential, you know, what we can do from a sustainability standpoint, from a programming standpoint, areas for collaboration, just to really serve Elmwood, but the larger community overall. So, you know, I expect you'll be fully involved throughout the journey, and it should be an exciting time. So thank you for the opportunity this evening.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Our
Thank you,
next
Matt.
agenda item is an update on the library's plans for the Juneteenth celebration, which tick, 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 tick is coming up soon. Chair recognizes Acting Chair Carol Waxman.
Thank you, Carol Waxman, Acting Library Director. We are excited. We are ready. We are going forward. So to celebrate Juneteenth, we have booklets that were curated and sent to the schools. We have a bookmark that was graphically designed by our incredible team. On the day of the event, we'll have a table in front of the library with these items. We will have a video playing with all of our library ads on it. We will have an art show in the building starting 2 weeks before June 19th. Right now, there's a call for works from artists of color. Artists can submit up to 2 pieces to be displayed on easels throughout the building. There is no fee to submit, and the artists may sell their works afterwards. The painting on the Martin Luther King mural has begun. The wall is now white and blue. There was a volunteer day on May 22nd so that community members could also paint. The mural will be unveiled in a ceremony at 2:15 on June 19th. The project is in partnership with Concerned Parents of Color, WASCO, the West Hartford Public Library, West Hartford Arts Commission, and the Town of West Hartford. The Noah Webster Library will remain open until 4 o'clock on June 19th so that the public can come in and view the art display. There will also be a virtual adult author talk by father and son Stephen and Paul Kendrick discussing a book about Martin Luther King. A children's author, Carol Boston Weatherford, will be virtually visiting the 5th graders in West Hartford as well as the 8th graders in West Hartford. We've had a program also to celebrate Juneteenth, Should I Teach My Child to See Color, facilitated by Kenya Rutland. And all that and more will be happening. And that concludes the report about Juneteenth.
Thank you, Carol. Chair recognizes Gail Crockett.
Hi, thank you, Carol, very much. I just wanted to add that the Witness Stones Project is also one of the sponsors. They're actually kicking off the ceremony on Saturday at 10 o'clock with their Witness Stones annual recognition of another identified enslaved person here in West Hartford. And a marker will be made. And also there will be this incredible drumming ceremony that will processional after that program down North Main into the town green. So I think that's something that people might want to step out and catch. And Carol, I'm just going to slide in here. So I just got through meeting with Ann Donovan, who is co-chair with me on Outreach, and she asked me this question, so I'm posing it to you. The table that's going to be out in front of the library, are you going to have opportunity for people to sign up for library cards? I mean, Ann would like to volunteer to help out at that table, but she didn't know if there would be room, quote, for us to be there. I mean, I'm going to be in a lot of different places, but certainly to talk about community outreach and specifically to try to get people to sign up for library cards. Is that part of that table?
Carol Waxman, Acting Library Director. Gail, we would prefer that people go inside where staff will be waiting to create library cards for them.
Are you going to, Gail Crockett Library, are you going to direct them to do that? Because otherwise they won't know they have to go inside the building.
Sure, Carol Waxman. Let me check that out, Gail. I'll get back to you.
Okay. And one other question, with respect to the author who is going to be presenting to the fifth graders and others, is her presentation going to be placed in the newsletter for people to access by video? Or, I mean, how can the general public also be made aware of that and listen to her presentation? Like if people wanted to play it at their homes for their children because they can't, for whatever reason, they didn't see it in school.
Carol Waxman. Gail, it is geared to all fifth grade classes are going to see it. All eighth grade classes. I'm not sure at this point if it is available to the general public. I will ask and find out and tell you that. Or maybe it will be recorded and put out later. I will check into it and let you know.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you, Carol. Any other questions? If not, I'll move on a little briskly. Our last, but not least, item under an old business is the Smart Locker project status. And we have a number of staff members here. Karen Palmatier, who's the branch library head of the Bishop's Corner branch. Sorry, Karen, I can't get it out. And Jen Francis, who's our tech support area for the library. So, Carol, I can recognize you, and I don't know who wants to start talking, first. But Carol, how do you want me to handle this?
Sure, Carol Waxman. So let me just preface this by saying that we are submitting 2 grants for payment of these lockers. The product is an Element Indoor 4-tower 21 locker system to be purchased from Package Concierge and hopefully be installed in front of the Bishop's Corner Library. So Jen Francis, our technical services librarian, is here to answer any questions about the locker system. And Karen Palmatier from the Bishop's Corner branch, our branch operations manager, helped us by writing and facilitating a survey of the Bishop's Corner patrons to let us know why it would be appreciated and why it would be needed there. So is it all right to call upon Jen and Karen now, Jill?
Yes, please.
Jen, you want to start?
Sure, exactly. I'm here to answer any questions. It's an amazing project. I'm just kind of curious, what do you guys need to know answered? Because I know that you guys have a lot of questions. So what exactly are you guys looking for information?
Jen, if I could help you out, this is Jill Spear, Library Board Chair. So some of the information you passed in before, Jen, the purpose of the lockers, a little bit about Bishop's Corner, why there, the fact that it's sort of a beta site to get our legs on it. I think we're all up to speed on that. I think you could probably, if you could summarize the process that you use to vet the different vendors and how you come up with this recommendation. If you, I know that's a lot to
Absolutely.
summarize, but
No, no, it's all right. No, absolutely. Well, we had to. Well, I first reached out to a bunch of companies. There were about 4 or 5 prospective companies that I had taken a look at. And at the end of the day, Package Concierge seemed to fit all of the criteria that we were looking for when it came to implementing these lockers. In contact, the 2 lockers that are known for library use, which is, I believe, DTEC and Biblioteca. Those 2 are well known in the library world. However, their lockers are not meant to be outdoors. And the DTEC librarian, actually, salesperson, actually became very, she let me know. She was just like, I want to let you know up front that our lockers rust. And I said, oh, okay, well, that's not what we want. And then when I spoke with Biblioteca, they basically said the same exact thing. They said, no, our lockers are not compliant with outdoor weather. So they kind of fell off. Plus, they were also more expensive. It would have been nice to have them because they integrate with our library system. So it integrated with Sierra, which we use, and it would have been great for that aspect. But if it's going to rust, and one of them suggested, oh, why don't you just wipe them down every time it rains? And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. So those 2 fell off, and then it was left with Package Concierge and Package Concierge and Pending Package. Those were the last 2 that we looked at, and Package Concierge seems to have more of an understanding how we are working in the library system, as well as having some lockers at libraries. Whereas when you looked at Package Pending, they did not have any libraries that were using their product. So at the end of the day, that's how I narrowed it down to Package Concierge. They have library experience. They are outside, weather, compliant with the elements, so on and so forth. So that is how we narrowed it down to that company. Otherwise, the only other company I did not look at was Luxor. They happen to be out of California. They also do outside package vending machines. However, they did not get back to me. It took them about a good month before they even got back to me. So when you're working with a company and they get back to you a month after you send them a request, that's not a business I think I want to use. So that's, Package Concierge has been very upfront. He's, answered all my questions within 2 hours of when I reach out to him. So I feel comfortable with going with them.
Great.
That's how we came to that.
Thanks, Jen. That was nice and concise. So,
Try.
questions before we go to you, Karen. Let's deal with the information Jen's told us. So the chair recognizes Gail Crockett for a question.
Yes, Gail Crockett, Library Board Member. Thank you, Jen. I just would like to know the company that you've chosen. Can you tell us what other cities or communities they have currently their lockers outside?
Absolutely. So I actually just spoke with them a couple of days ago. So Brown County Library System out in Ohio, they have one outside currently, and she loves it. She says it's great. They actually sprung for an extra $1,000 so they can get wrapping of their emblem, or what do we want to call that, on decal outside of their locker. So it actually represents the library. It actually has the name Brown County, Public Library, and so on and so forth. So that is one that they've narrowed down. There is another, but it wasn't a library system. It was just happened to be a business that was up in Massachusetts. And they also were very happy with the, how the lockers held up through all the elements. But we zoned in on them because they are a library system and they know how we work. So I wanted to definitely, work with somebody like that. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Jen? All right. Chair recognizes Karen Palmier. Excuse me, that was my watch talking. Mickey Mouse all of a sudden. Chair recognizes Karen Palmentier. Karen, you want to tell us a little about the Bishop's Corner and the process of the lockers, how it's going to impact Bishop's Corner and how you went about assessing its utilization?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Karen Palmentier, Branch Services Manager. So we had probably, I think, close to 500 people answer our survey. The vast majority of them wanted the locker service. We chose Bishops because the Curbside at Bishop's has been the most popular, the most used across the 3 libraries. So that's why we're testing it there. Why it was so important that we have the outside lockers was that far and away the reason given for wanting the locker service was I want to be able to pick up my holds 24/7. So if we had the lockers anywhere inside the library, you're still limited to the library open hours. And even this past week, Bishop's has been open every day, no appointments needed, and we still had close to 60 people choose curbside service. And the reasons that they gave us over the phone mostly were, I have small kids, I want to run up to the lockers, grab my stuff, and get out of here, and I'm still not comfortable coming into your building.
And if I could just mention on to that, when I spoke to Ohio, the Brown County, Ohio, they had basically said a lot of that, but they had mentioned with package concierge, you can actually see when patrons are picking up items, and they noticed that there was a lot of individuals who are picking up items before work. So like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, just, before the library is opened. And in the evening, they actually saw a bunch of people picking up at, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So, there's that advantage of the 24/7 availability. That is really what is driving a lot of this. Sure.
The chair recognizes Natalia.
Thank you. Natalia Menjivar, library board member. I was curious in terms of when you feel the lockers would be utilized, or would they be stocked sort of multiple times during the day and replace curbside pickup, or would it be basically stocked once at the end of every day so that 12 people could pick up between the hours the library would be closed, or 21 people, I guess, if there were 21 lockers?
Karen Palmatier, branch services manager. Yeah, the idea is, at least at Bishop's Corner, for the lockers to replace our curbside service. At the main library in the center, they have that nice lobby space. Their staff can kind of keep an eye on the curbside table. We don't have that at Bishop's. We have to tuck it way to the side of our front doors, all the way outside. So you have the issue of the elements, and you also have the issue of a bunch of brand new books on a table with people coming into an open building and the staff not having any control over who's looking at the table, who's touching the table. So at least at Bishop's, yes, the idea is that the lockers would completely replace our curbside service. In terms of the workflow, we haven't 100% figured that out yet, but my initial idea is one of the final things of the day that the staff would do would be to load the locker pickups for that day, send the notices out to people, which included in those notices would be their code to get into the locker. And then, yeah, to do that once a day, sort of near the closing time.
Karen, this Jill Spear, Library Board Chair. It's fair to say, though, I want to reiterate what you just said. This is a beta project. Part of it is we're going to be learning from this, and your procedures may be modified as you learn. Maybe you would be filling it multiple times in the day, or morning and afternoon, or at lunchtime, or whatever. Correct? It's
yes,
a learning
absolutely.
experience. Yeah. Chair recognizes Gail Crockett.
Hi, Gail Crockett, Library Board member. So, Karen, people are not assigned a locker, correct, until their request gets loaded into a locker, then they get a code, right? So how quickly do you know when they've picked up their items so that you can then reassign, let's say, the locker space I had to Jill? I mean, have you thought through that mechanism? How does that work?
Yep, Karen Palmatier. We haven't gotten to see the software yet, but my understanding from Jen is that we would get, when we got in the following morning, we get a report of everything that was picked up since we closed, and know that those lockers would then be ready for, the next patron.
Okay.
Genevieve Francis, technology librarian. Also, what they have there's a part where you can mark the locker as not unusable until it's cleaned. So once a patient picks up their materials, that locker is marked as empty, but has been used. So in that way, you can go and clean the locker if you choose to do that, or just to check or inspect it. So you have the ability to actually pay attention to what is going on with the lockers before you place more materials inside of it.
Thank you.
Good question. There's a reason they're called smart lockers, not just lockers. Other questions? Chair recognizes Natalia.
Natalia Menjivar, library board member. So I was curious then, you mentioned you get a report maybe the next day about the lockers that are usable or empty. Would it provide real-time information also then about throughout the day so it can replace curbside on a quarterly hour basis?
Genevieve Francis, technology librarian, absolutely. That is one of the, it's real time. And actually, when I spoke with Brown County, they suggested you might want to consider putting in a time period in which people can pick up their, because it could be that, people pick them up and you're constantly getting requests like throughout the day. So we really do have to work with workflow and figure out what's the best for our, for our staff members to restock it. But yeah, we do have real-time access as well.
Good questions. Anybody else? Questions? Okay, just a reminder to everyone, this project is being funded entirely privately. So there's a number of funding grant requests. So the town is not providing any funding for this other than the staff time, labor, your mental time to think and work through your processes and stuff. And obviously, when you're actually using it operationally, you instead of filling it on the curbside table, you'd be filling the lockers. But the funding is coming privately from hopefully multiple sources. And if any community members, I know this is being recorded, are interested in supporting the project, that we'd be happy to have them support it through making donations to the West Hartford Library Foundation. Okay. Great. If no other questions, I'd like to move on to our last item, which is we have no new business. And so we have the director's current monthly briefing. Carol, we haven't left you any time at all, but I know you submitted it in writing and it'll be published. But
Absolutely. Would you like me to make just a few key points about our services?
Please, Carol.
Sure. Carol Waxman, interim library director. So we no longer have appointments in any of the buildings. We are no longer quarantining items. That all ended on May 15th. We do require that masks still be worn for anybody over the age of 2, just to be in compliance with the West Hartford schools. We've moved some furniture back to the floor. Patrons can stay as long as they want. They're not limited to 30 minutes. We no longer have a greeter. Starting June 7th, library hours will increase again at Noah Webster from 5 to 6, Mondays through Wednesdays, and until 2 on Saturdays. We plan to open additional hours during the summer, and we will absolutely keep you posted on that.
Thank you, Carol. Great. Well, thank you all for running over. I know we had a lot of things to discuss tonight, but they're all very exciting. So with that was our last item. So I'd like to remind people our next meeting will be held on June 28th. And do we have an motion for adjournment? Chair recognizes Natalia.
Could you say that date again, Jill? Natalia Menjivar,
June 28th. I have it, Janet. I'm correct, right? I know I always fumble. June 28th.
No, I think you are correct. And I just needed to mention that I will be out of town and potentially out of an area where I can be able to be connected. I'm going to be staying on an Amish farm actually that week. So there is no Wi-Fi and I just don't know about my connectivity.
Okay. All right. Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you.
Do we have Gail Crockett? Chair recognizes Gail Crockett.
Yes, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Kim. Chair recognizes Kim.
Kim Cohen, library board member, second Gail's motion.
Okay, a motion for adjournment is made and seconded, and I'll quickly call the roll. Kim Cohen for the vote.
Kim Cohen, library board member, in favor.
Gail Crockett.
Gail Crockett, library board member, approved.
Eileen Daly. Eileen, we can see you, we just can't hear you.
Library board member approved.
Thank you. And Natalia Menjivar?
Menjivar, library board member, approve.
And finally, Jill Spear, Library Board Chair, approved. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.